Welcome everyone to Points on Call with Brian Dixon. Sorry, I've lost my voice a little bit. I was screaming like a little girl on every roller coaster, and man, it's tough being a dad trying to keep up with your young kids, right? But we have a product for that, which I was consuming at gallons, it seemed like, just so I could keep up with them. But I'm anxious for today's call. This is one of my favorite products. I think we're all aware of it. We love it. We use it. I know, Brian, you guys launched a new product as far as a flavor in this category. And today's topic is Axio. And I couldn't be more excited to have Dr. Brian Dixon on board with us and going through what this product is. Why is it so important? How does it work? Why does it work the way that it does? What is it doing? What are the key ingredients? All of the above. And I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Brian Dixon. He is our VP of Product and Development. He is ahead of every single thing. And the greatest thing that I came out of EA for me in Florida was Brian and I's private conversation on the balcony and really discussing this phone call. You know, what could we do to add as much value to every single person that is not only here live, but also going to go through the recording. And some of the distributors have given us such incredible insight. And one is Michelle Scapp and I have had a lot of different conversations. And she told me a lot about some of the earlier times when LifeVantage was going through a massive growth and some of the stuff that, was being discussed with regards to product. And one of those was the fact that they were going through a lot of the scientific peer-reviewed studies and the importance of them and why. And so after Brian and I were discussing, we're like, hey, why don't we go through Axio? Why don't we go through some of the other, hair care and some of the, the skin care and different things like that, and then start to dissect what the peer-reviewed studies are. Why can we even read them? How do we read them? What are maybe the top 3 to 5 main key points in each one of those scientific peer-reviewed studies are? And then also the possibility of, if you're asked a specific question, which peer-reviewed study would we recommend based on those questions? And so what we're trying to do, guys, instead of standing on the stage or sitting in the living rooms or talking in coffee shops about these, we have 31 peer-reviewed studies. Well, what does that really mean? Yes, that makes sense. Yes, a peer-reviewed study is massive, especially in this industry, guys. I want you to know, I've been in this industry for 20 years. And most of the studies that I see from our competitors or the different companies in this space is they are paying their scientific advisory board to come up with a study. And could you honestly ask this question? Would they honestly run a study, and if it came back negative, would they post it? Would they send that out to the world? And the answer is absolutely not. And so anything that you see on a paid, scientific advisory published study, I respect it. It doesn't mean that it's wrong, but to me, the peer-reviewed study, the outside, the third party, the institute, the anti-institute of aging, and Harvard and Ohio State, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Why would they spend their own money to dissect our products? And in the study of that, the beautiful thing for us as distributors or customers or new people that are looking at this for the first time, the beauty of that is that they've spent millions and millions of dollars to do a study and post whatever study that actually is, whether it's negative or positive. We have 31 of the best institutions across the planet that have dissected our product and have given us tremendous arrows in our quiver to be able to go out into the world and share this tremendous product. Now, beyond just saying we have a peer-reviewed study, what are they? What do they mean? What does all that scientific data in those studies mean for us? And so Brian and I are going to start hacking through that. It's going to be an amazing time. But before we get to that, Brian, Axio, man, this product is fun. It's exciting. It's sampleable. It's good. It's refreshing. But the biggest thing people have questions on, and a lot of people have asked me, what the heck is a nootropic? what is all of this stuff? How is it a brain food? How does it create energy? Is it an activator? I'm going to turn the time over to you, and I can't wait for this presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Fry. And please stop talking. It sounds painful. And I can see, I wish I would have been there with you in the park to be with your kids. It was fun to spend some time with your kids down in Orlando, but I'm sure they ran you ragged for sure. You have your hands full in a good way, man. You've got a beautiful family there, right, Fry? But, and, I'm really looking forward to kind of getting into that deep hard science with you too. It'll be fun. I think there's a lot of different aspects we can talk about. I loved what you said about maybe, teaching people about the peer-reviewed process, teaching people how to approach even a scientific manuscript. It can give you some quick tips, some little cheater tips to get through scientific studies. So yeah, that'll be fun. But until then, stay tuned. A little bit of a cliffhanger, but today we're going to talk about Axio. Since Fry stole my thunder in the big reveal. But let's talk a little bit about your brain. I mean, I think you've seen enough of my presentations now that, I kind of like to take a few steps back and kind of set the stage for what we're talking about today. And since we're talking about the brain, let's talk a little bit about our brain. And I think I've found some pretty interesting statistics that are, oh man, this might be a presentation full of puns, but it's just going to blow your minds. But really at its core, if you think about it, our brain is our body's computer, and directly or indirectly, right? Directly through nerves, indirectly through maybe some of the molecules it's producing that can get into circulation in our bodies, right? Hormones, for example. Like our brain is really controlling every aspect of our health. And it's pretty important. I mean, how long could we live without our brain attached to our shoulders? Not very long, right? But here's some fun facts about the brain. So your head, just in case you ever wondered, weighs 10 pounds. I mean, you ever wonder why when you're slouching over your computer, your shoulders get sore? It'd be like maybe having to hold a bicep curl with a 10-pound weight all day long, all day, every day. So it's a pretty significant weight sitting on top of your shoulders, why posture is so important. But of that 10 to 11 pounds, only 3 of that is the organ that we know as the brain. 3 pounds. I mean, I was shocked actually to see how little it weighed. Something that is true, our brains do shrink as we age. So that's couldn't be more disappointing. But what isn't true is that we only utilize 10% of our brain. It's kind of this thing that's just lived in folklore and literature and movies that, if we could just tap into that other 90%, wow, think of the things we could do. We'd all be living in the Matrix probably. Consistently, scientists are comparing what the brain can do versus a computer. I mean, we hear artificial intelligence every single day in our lives now, right? Artificial intelligence. The thing that these data scientists are striving for is really to make the computers we can put in our cars or in our homes or in our robots as high functioning as our brain is, right? That's right now the gold standard is our brain. It has a processing speed of 10 to the 16th. So that's a 1 with 16 zeros behind it. So you can start moving the decimal places and see how many, I don't even know how to count when you get above quadrillion, I guess. It contains 100 billion neurons. Kind of keeping with that theme of computing power, it can store 2,500,000,000 gigabytes of information. It's insane. And I assure you, nothing on the face of the earth currently keeps up with what our brain can do. My brother's an engineer and a mathematician. He has his PhD in computer and electrical engineering, works for a national lab. It's a pretty prestigious position to get if you know about what our national labs do. But he does a lot of artificial intelligence. And I was talking to him one day and I just said, how long until computers catch up to the brain? And he said, it will never happen in our lifetime. And even with this concept of Moore's law or Moore's theory of computing power doubles every single, it doubles every 2 years. even with that doubling in processing speeds over the next, course of our lives, computers still won't be able to do what our brain can do, if you can believe that. And then lastly, there are over 60 different neurotransmitters in our brains. And if you're not familiar with what a neurotransmitter is, it's a molecule that's going to somehow move the signal either down the neuron, or the little wire, right, that we call neurons, or it's going to help the signal kind of jump from one neuron to the next and keep that signal going. So over 60 types of neurotransmitters. Here's a little cartoon of what a neuron looks like. At its core, it's a cell. So it's got nucleus, it's got mitochondria, it's got all the stuff that all the other cells in our bodies have. But it does have some specialized structures, right? It's got the dendrite, which are kind of like these little feelers that the neuron will send out. And then it's got kind of these longer, what they call axons. And this is really how we start to kind of make this electrical system wired in our bodies. These axons just keep growing. They interconnect through those neurotransmitter signals. That signal gets transduced wherever it needs to transduce. But if I can focus your attention to kind of the blow up on the screen, where it's focused in on two nerve cells ending. So you can kind of see faded away there is another neuron, and it has its same dendrites kind of reaching out, and eventually they form a connection, but it's not like a direct connection. There's a little bit of space between those neurons, and that space is called the synapse. And so this is where I was talking about, where some of those neurotransmitters have to kind of jump the bridge, right? You could pretend there's a little river or a canal right there that you got to get the signal across. And neurotransmitters is how that happens. And it's all doing it by cellular signaling, right? A signaling molecule is released, it binds to a receptor, it triggers that next neuron to keep the signal going down the length of its axon to keep it going. But zooming in on that synapse, just kind of want to set the stage for what's going on and why Axio can be so positive, because some of the ingredients there can help support that neurotransmitter synthesis. So here we have this nerve signal that's going down one neuron to the next, okay? So it's starting up there at neuron A, and then eventually we need to get it to neuron B. So what's happening in neuron A is that neuron is packaging up a neurotransmitter. Now, in this case, in this example, I specifically pulled the serotonin pathway. I think it's probably the neurotransmitter we're maybe the most familiar with. So in this case, neuron A bags up a whole bunch of neurotransmitter or serotonin, and it keeps it in a little container that's called a vesicle. And that vesicle is just sitting, waiting there. I should also mention that that vesicle is bound by a lipid membrane, just like the membrane of our cell. And what'll happen is the right signal will come along and it will tell that vesicle to go to the actual neuron membrane, fuse with it, and basically open up and spill its contents into that synapse, into that space. And so that's exactly what's happening here. You can kind of see there's a half-fused vesicle right there in the middle of neuron A. It's releasing that neurotransmitter. That neurotransmitter floats around in that synapse and then eventually binds receptors, and then that signal will go down the next neuron. And that process will repeat over and over and over again, as many neurons as there are. But then what has to happen is we need that signal to stop. So there's a whole bunch of mechanisms where these neurons will clean up the space in that synapse of all the kind of leftover neurotransmitter that's there. And a couple ways it'll do it. It can be degraded right there on site, but there's also other receptors that will reabsorb and basically recycle that neurotransmitter. You can get it back into a vesicle so that that nerve can fire again. And just, a little bit of an aside, being a full-on molecular biology nerd, just as a little side note, like I said, this is serotonin signaling. And I think we've all heard of the drugs SSRIs, or serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So these are drugs that are prescribed to individuals experiencing depression. So the goal of these drugs, these pharmaceuticals, is to inhibit that cleanup process and that reuptake process. So serotonin is living in that synapse for longer, so it has more of an opportunity to fire at that receptor. So kind of a cool way to weave something we hear about in modern society back into molecular biology. So just a couple more fun facts about the brain. I love to think about our brain as being a muscle. Even though it's a completely different tissue, I like to think of our brain as being analogous to a muscle, right? Fact, individuals who proactively use their brains tend to live longer and have healthier brains and usually healthier lives overall. And this can be anything from learning to play a musical instrument, just taking a class on anything, right? Just making your brain process information. It can be anything from a cooking class to maybe you want to learn calculus for some goofy reason, right? Learning a new language, writing, journaling, all the games that we play, whether it's on our phone, Sudoku, crossword puzzles, it's amazing. Social interactions are also stimulating our brains. And there's some interesting data that shows the more social we are, especially the later in life, we tend to live longer. So that social interaction is incredibly important. But again, if we just keep dwelling on that muscle analogy, just like a muscle, that brain's gonna learn and retain what it practices. I mean, how many of us have seen probably ad nauseum all of those Facebook memes, Instagram memes on there? You know, what are you telling yourself? What words are you using with yourself? Well, this is the science of why that's important, right? If I keep telling myself I'm so stupid, your brain literally starts to just rewire in that way. So that positive self-talk is incredibly important, to just continue to use that brain just like a muscle, right? Get that muscle memory in your brain in a positive way. And then fact number 2, it has to be nourished properly for optimal performance, right? We're still talking about cells. They're cells that look much different than many of our other cells in our bodies, but they're still cells at their core and need to be treated as such. And they also have some unique characteristics that we can leverage, just like with our other products, to specifically promote brain health. The issue is, and why supporting brain health is so important, is because our brain is an incredibly demanding organ. Right? Remember, it's only 3 pounds, right? So less than 2% of our body weight, but yet our brain consumes 20% of all the resources, right? Oxygen, energy, all the nutrition that we're taking in. 20% goes to the brain. Pound for pound, the brain is the most energetically demanding organ in our body, right? So think about that for a second. And if you don't think protecting with Protandim NRF2 is also incredibly important for the brain, right? You're kidding yourselves for that exact reason. And it's not just consuming that 20% of resources during the day, right? When we finally got the technology to be able to measure brain waves, scientists were shocked to see how active our brains were when we slept. We made the assumption that our brains basically just shut down and took a little break. But when we sleep, and why getting enough sleep is also so important, is when we're sleeping, our brains are basically exercising themselves and trying to solidify things that happened in your day, things that you may have been trying to remember. So if you want to get a good night's sleep and perform at your top capacity the next day, you got to get enough sleep. So again, presentation full of puns, right? Everything I've just laid out, it's a fascinating organ. It's still an enigma in many, many ways to scientists. And in many ways, we don't know a lot about the brain and how it has this massive computing power. But it literally is probably our most forgotten about organ, even though ironically, that's where thought generates. And I would say and argue that, you know, very few of us are probably very proactive and deliberate in looking after the health of our brains. So what can you do? to support your brain health. And I think there's quite a number of things that we can leverage with that physiology, the biochemistry of these neurons, that we can better support our brain health. So right off the bat, we need to be thinking about B vitamins, need to be thinking about the right minerals, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, antioxidants because of that metabolic activity. And then because we want to encourage the proper functioning of those neurons, there are what I call neuroactive ingredients that can help those neurons better convey that signal down the neuron and on to the next neuron. So that brings us to Axio. So I like to break down the ingredients in Axio into 3 parts. You know, the first would be essential vitamins and minerals, right? And the main reason those vitamins and minerals are in there is to support that energy production. I mean, that again, that flux of energy going through the brain is just absolutely unbelievable. So we want to make sure that we can give our bodies all that, or our brains, all that ATP that it needs to function, because that nerve function is incredibly energetic. Now, antioxidant production, I've been kind of dwelling on this quite a bit and how important that is. But there's also ingredients in there that are working as antioxidants, and directly or indirectly. They can be working as direct antioxidants, just in their molecular structures. They're able to give and receive electrons, but they can also be working nutrigenomically to also activate our NRF2 pathway. Green tea, right? Same ingredient that's found in Protandim NRF2 synergizer. Quercetin is great. It works nutrigenomically, but it's also great at cardiovascular health. So if you can imagine, we have to get all of those nutrient requirements to the brain. So also supporting our cardiovascular health is important. And there's a lot of great research around quercetin helping support cardiovascular function. And pine bark, again, can be working as a direct antioxidant, but also working nutrigenomically to turn on the things that we want to turn on. And then the 3 ingredients I would list as these neuroactive ingredients. So whether it's caffeine and L-theanine that's working directly through this receptor type of interaction, or things like DMAE, which is a precursor for a couple of neurotransmitters in our brain. So we're helping to promote the production of those neurotransmitters so we can keep those signals moving along. And with those ingredients, and I think all of the effects that we felt personally, right, here are the claims that we can make with Axio: improving mental endurance, acuity, concentration, and memory retention. That's a really cool claim, guys. Enhances neurotransmitter function, reduces mental fatigue and brain fog, increasing both your physical and mental energy. Have you ever felt tired when all you've done all day is sat in a desk and worked on a computer? Well, there's a real reason for that. Again, if we use that analogy of a muscle as our brain being a muscle, when you're sitting there thinking and everything's firing off, you are doing work just like you're out for a run. So to feel tired and exhausted and like you need to take a nap or go to sleep for the day, that's a real thing because our brain muscle has gotten tired. And then lastly, we know that we can also enhance our brain's resilience to stress. And then I think also what's so cool about our Axio are some of the claims we can make about what's not in the product, right? Axio is incredibly clean. It's low calorie at 15 calories. It's low carb. I think if memory serves, there's going to be 3 to 4 grams of carbs. That's it in a serving of Axio. It's vegetarian, BSCG approved, and free of artificial colors, flavors, sweeteners, no added sugars, GMO, and gluten free. So a lot of pros by what's not in Axio. So Axio is hitting on most of these fronts, right? We're getting the B vitamins, the minerals, the antioxidants, those neuroactive nutrients. But I still think there's a couple of other things that I would feel remiss if I didn't talk about when it comes to brain health in addition to Axio. And I think the best way to have that conversation is by looking at our focused mind activation stack. I love the name focused mind. It's not the brain health activation stack. It's that focused mind. And we know that the ingredients in these 3 products are going to do exactly that. They're going to help us get more focused in whatever it is we're doing, if it's an athletic endeavor or if it's just doing our work, right? So the 3 products in the focused mind activation stack, obviously Axio, obviously Protandim NRF2 Synergizer. It's the core of every stack that we have. And then Protandim NAD Synergizer. So we've already talked about Axio. Let's talk about Protandim NRF2 ingredients. Antioxidant protection, right? All the things we talk about, those 5 ingredients, we know activate the NRF2 pathway so that we can also get that NRF2 protection inside of our brains. I've been asked the question a couple times, but I've heard that these nutrients don't cross the blood-brain barrier, or the BBB as it's referred to shorthand. And what is the BBB? Well, it turns out that the blood vessels that are feeding our brain, the cells that line those blood vessels are packed in even tighter than normal. And they're packed tighter than normal so that the brain can very tightly control what compounds are coming into it. So there are a number of nutrients that do not cross the blood-brain barrier, but all 5 of the ingredients in Protandim NRF2 Synergizer cross the blood-brain barrier and will be activating NRF2 in the brain. But interestingly, in doing a little bit of research, ashwagandha and bacopa have similar neuroactive properties. Both of these ingredients have been shown to help with mood. They've been shown to help with learning, concentration, and just overall cognitive function. So we're also getting some additional ingredients that have been shown to have brain health benefits by taking Protandim NRF2 Synergizer. And I think everyone on the call is going to know these claims, but basically, right, just that amazing claim that we all get to make, that we can reduce our oxidative stress by 40% in 30 days. So on to Protandim NAD Synergizer, and how can this help support brain function? Well, we're seeing the same things here with that antioxidant protection and those neuroactive nutrients. So for that antioxidant protection, we have copper and then vitamin B3 in there, the niacin. So this is a complex of copper and niacin that's together. Copper is really important for nerve function. So copper and zinc are incredibly important for nerve function. Niacin, a B vitamin, so it's going to also help support that energy production. And then wasabi and olive, they're going to be acting to turn on those NRF2 pathways, as well as the pathways to be able to make more NAD. And if you're not familiar with what NAD is doing in the cell, it's the primary player and probably the most important molecule when it comes to energy production inside of the mitochondria. NAD is the guy that's out there kind of catching these electrons and putting them through the mitochondria so that we can actually make all of that energy. And then when it comes to neuroactive ingredients, we have teacrine in this product. Teacrine, when you look at the molecular structures, it's pretty similar to caffeine. It's just different by a couple of different atoms in there. So molecularly, it is working similar to caffeine, but it's been shown to be non-habituating, like caffeine can be, right? If, you know, me in graduate school, I was a copious coffee drinker. And if you ever forgot to drink coffee in the morning and you got that raging headache, right? That's the habituation that's occurring. But teacrine has been shown to work very similar to caffeine, but you don't get that habituation side of teacrine. So we get a lot of stimulation similar to caffeine, and also like epinephrine, right? That kind of fight or flight type of process. Caffeine, just a couple interesting asides to caffeine. It's interesting. Some people have this aversion to caffeine. And I think caffeine gets really a very bad rap. Caffeine is the most consumed psychoactive ingredient on this planet. And more than that, it's also incredibly safe. When I was doing research, I was trying to find if it's possible to overdose from caffeine or teacrine. And I could only find, I believe the number was 3 accounts of people that had died from caffeine. And it turns out that a lot of that, or the majority of those, were basically people trying to kill themselves by taking a whole bunch. You remember when the caffeine pills, I forget what they're called, but when those caffeine pills were really popular, they're really popular when I was in college. You could take these pills and no dose, right? No dose. But you could take no dose and study all night. So it's not until we get into these just insane and really unachievable levels of caffeine that it should be a concern. And again, I'm lumping caffeine and teacrine together. Incredibly safe compounds that have tremendous effects on our body and are actually incredibly healthy compounds. So they're working directly to activate receptors inside of our bodies, but they're also very potent antioxidants in their own right. So a lot of health benefits with consuming caffeine and teacrine. And we'll talk about the benefits of protandim desynergizer a little bit more in depth. So supports autophagy, right? That's a big complicated word that means cellular cleanup, okay? So our cells are constantly turning over, right? Our cells are masters at recycling things inside of itself, right? It's an efficiency thing. But what can happen is something may become so damaged from, say, oxidative stress, a protein, some other structure in the cell. It can get so damaged by that oxidant, by a toxin, that it gets so damaged that it becomes unrecognizable to those normal recycling mechanisms. Well, the cell can sense that, and it will turn on kind of this super cleanup pathway that's known as autophagy. And it's a way to deal with these critically damaged components of the cell. This notion of autophagy is especially important for the cells in our bodies that turn over very, very slowly, right? We want to keep that room as clean and as uncluttered as possible so that cellular function can occur. Cells where constant turnover is happening, like in our gut, maybe in our skin, that autophagy process isn't as important. But when we start talking about our heart and our brain, incredibly important. Going to support a healthy cardiovascular system. Again, we talked about the reasons for that. We have to make sure we can deliver on those resource requirements of the brain. It's also been shown in here, specifically teacrine, to help improve mental focus and concentration, support a positive mood and motivation, and especially motivation to exercise. How great would that be if it was less of a fight to go for a run or go to the gym every single day? Boosting your mental and physical energy. And then look, it even is helping to support our immune response. So that's our focus mind activation stack, but I want to take it one step further. This isn't an official stack that's available from LifeVantage, but I would encourage you, if you're thinking about your brain health, there is one more product that I think you should add to the list, and that is Omega Plus, right? Our brain is basically, 90% fat. And then of that fat, around 60% is going to be those omega-3 fatty acids. So our brain wants and thrives when it has enough omega-3 fatty acids to do its job. And the main reason why omega-3s are so important for the brain and that neuronal function is if we think of a neuron as being like a wire that we might have in our houses or in our cars, right? Something that's conducting an electrical current, it'll have the metal, usually copper in the middle, and then it has some sort of protective covering on the outside. Well, why is that? What happens if you touch two kind of naked wires together? So you've removed that coating and you touch them together, you get a spark, maybe you get a short circuit. Well, the omega-3s are so important because that insulating layer in our brains, in these neurons, are omega-3 fatty acids. That sheath, they call it, that coating, literally keeps our neurons from short circuiting. And a lot of brain issues can develop when you have issues with that coating around our neurons. And so I think omega-3s are incredibly important. And so we can deliver those benefits through our product Omega Plus, right? Our omega-3 fatty acid product that's normalized to levels of DHA and EPA, and also containing vitamin D, which is also incredibly important for many aspects of brain health. But with Omega Plus, again, so many benefits that we get from these omega-3 fatty acids to support many aspects of our health, but also our brain health. So it is going to help with the cognitive health. It's going to help protect the cells for some of those reasons we talked about. Tons of cardiovascular health benefits. So we can also further help support that blood flow to the brain, and then also is helping to support a healthy immune system. So that's really my recommendations to you. Think about that focused mind activation stack. Consider adding Omega Plus on top of that. And with those 4 products, you have an incredibly potent brain health stack to just keep you all performing at your best.
Man, I haven't learned that much about my brain in the last 20 years. So thank you. That was incredible. And it's valuable information. And Brian, we have a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions that have been texted to me and that are in here. And one of the main questions was, what's the rationale behind the sweetener in Axio, especially why cane sugar? If you could maybe address that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And when I started, the only sweetener that we were using was stevia. Okay, and maltodextrin's in there a little bit for as a sweetener as well. It is well documented in the scientific literature that there are some sensitivities to stevia out there. And so one thing we were trying to do was, especially through the LTO program, the LTO flavor program that we've been doing, we were playing around with different sweeteners to see if we could offer some alternatives into that sweetener system. So if somebody did have that objection to stevia, we had other options available. And so in that case, we were looking at a combination of monk fruit and then just 1 gram of sugar. And I know it's been disconcerting to see maybe sugar on the label for at least some of you, but a couple important points I want to make. And one is we added 1 gram of sugar, of sucrose, but we're also able to pull 1 gram of maltodextrin out. So we basically replaced one for the other, and it didn't change the calorie count whatsoever. Okay. Now, if you, I don't know how far I want to go with this, but let me start by saying our brain, a lot of people don't appreciate. Remember that blood-brain barrier we were talking about and how hard it can be to get things and nutrients into the brain? Well, the preferred fuel source for the brain is glucose, just straight up glucose. It's much different. Our heart runs almost exclusively on fat, and our brain runs almost exclusively on glucose. So we also do want to be providing a little bit of fuel for the brain. And who knows, maybe we're going to get into a keto argument here in a second, but there's no such thing. If you stop eating sugar in your diet, right? It's carbohydrates. We love to villainize it, but it's sugar, carbohydrates, whatever you want to call it. But if you stop eating carbohydrates altogether 100%, you will die, right? Even a keto diet requires glucose to basically jumpstart that biochemistry. You cannot go on a carbohydrate-free diet and live very long. Okay, so we weren't afraid to put sugar in there for that exact reason. Let's give a few calories to the brain to help it function, as well as delivering an alternative sweetener system in case there were some objections.
Wow, that's incredible. That's a good explanation. I mean, and it's valid, right? I mean, there's a lot of this comes down to just the understanding, right? I mean, just the knowledge of what, and this is what's so important for these calls, Brian, is just even knowing that hey, we replaced 1 gram with this gram and we didn't change much about it. I mean, just those little facts mean so much to us as we tell the story, because we get bombarded with those types of questions, right? And so thank you for that explanation. Beverly mentioned, obviously the recommended omega is 3 per day. If we have more, is there, I mean, does the body just use what it needs and then it excretes out what it doesn't? Or how does that work?
So omega-3s are very, very interesting. And there was a series of studies that were done probably 10 or gosh, it might even be 15 years ago now, where scientists were looking at the relationship of omega-3s and then some event that's going to end your life. And we can call it, can be whatever, right? I'm trying to tiptoe around here, but let's just call it all-cause mortality. So your risk of dying from anything. And so what these scientists had found is they would use red blood cells as a marker. So in the membranes of our red blood cells have a whole bunch of omega-3 fatty acids. And it's probably to keep that red blood cell a little bit limber as it's squeezing through, especially the capillaries. But they have a tremendous amount of omega-3 fatty acids. And what they were able to show is the higher the level of omega-3s in these red blood cells, the lower your risk of dying from anything.
Wow.
So look, there is an upper limit. I'm going to say something grandiose here, but you literally almost can't take too much omega-3 fatty acids.
Okay.
Right?
So that comes down to the question. The question was literally, does it benefit a person if they do take above and beyond the recommended 3? So if I took 5 or 6 or 8, there would be a benefit to that.
Yeah, and to even spread it out, I take more than 3 a day. I don't know that I'm going to divulge my exact number, but I'm aggressive, right, with my omega-3 intake, and I'm also weighing. And maybe it's this curse of knowledge, but kind of the last supplements I'll take at night, I'll kind of do a little check-in with myself and just how was my day? How did I eat today? Did I eat gross and nasty? Right? Bunch of fried food, saturated fat, full of omega-6s and 9s, then I probably need to balance that out with some more omega-3s. So I'm taking them multiple times throughout the day for a number of reasons. Absolutely. And to make one more point, I wish on our US label, I wish it said take at least 4 per day as the recommended dose. And I wasn't around, obviously, when Omega Plus launched in the US, but I was around when Omega Plus launched in Australia. And if you look at the label there, the recommendation is to take 4 per day.
Wow.
And
I didn't know that. See, look at all these pearls of wisdom, just boom, boom, one after another. I love it.
So there is an upper limit, though. Let me say that there is an upper limit. Okay. So, but within reason, getting outside of that label recommendation is perfectly fine and probably a good recommendation for you.
Yeah, for anyone in my group, the recommendation is 15 a day. We're going to increase volume in a really quick way. I'm teasing. Follow what Brian's telling you. But let's switch gears a little bit. NAD, can that be taken with blood thinners? For those that are on blood thinners, is NAD something that is a problem, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'll preface this by saying, of course, check with your doc. Most of the concerns around blood thinners, and we tend to lump all blood thinners together, but it's really only 1 or 2 of these blood thinners that are the concern. And it's those blood thinners where we know there's an interaction with vitamin K, and specifically vitamin K1. And so that it's called K. I forget anyone speak German on the call. I forget vitamin K is named after because it's a coagulation factor, but in Germany, they start that word with a K. So they called it vitamin K. But it can interfere with that coagulation events that we're trying to modify by taking those different blood thinner medications. So the fact that there's no vitamin K in the product doesn't give me concern. And I don't know if there's maybe another reason, if there was another ingredient that they've seen, but just knowing what I know in this casual conversation, I would guess that there's no issues with taking Protandim NAD Synergizer.
Okay, beautiful. We have one of our guests that they work with a particular customer or person that has MS, and she's curious on, would you encourage them to add Axio to that regimen, knowing that it functions, for neurons and this and that type of thing? Like, would it help someone with that with regards to MS?
Yeah, let me get to the answer in a second, but I'll set up my answer by saying this. I probably, one of the most common questions I get is, Brian, what's the best diet to be on? And my answer is, there is no best diet, right? It's keto, paleo, DASH, Mediterranean. I throw out the fat of the week, right? Fat of the month, fat of the week, it feels like these days. But there is no perfect diet. And we are, even though on a genetic level, we're 99.99% the same, but that 0.1% or 0.01% does translate into some meaningful differences between us all. And we do respond differently to things. And so my response to the diet question is, what is the food that's going to power your day, make you feel energized and ready to tackle the world, versus when you eat a meal and your next response is, I need a nap or a coffee to try to power through this lull that I just put myself in. So the perfect diet is the one that makes you feel energized and ready to tackle the day. Now, I say all of that because some of us can drink coffee really late at night and fall right asleep. I can't have coffee after 2 p.m. unless I want to stay awake all night. So my response is, and I don't know exactly what symptoms the individual might be experiencing, but give it a go. Work with your doc, give it a go, and have them run you through those cognitive tests, and maybe even placebo control yourself and do it once with, once without, and see if it's working for you and if you're seeing some positive results. And that's kind of where I ultimately want to say, kind of leveraging through that diet conversation, in a lot of ways, we should be doing that with ourselves. When do I feel the best? When I'm taking my supplements, right? Like my wife, for example, feels a little tired after she takes Protandim NRF1 Synergizer. And this is crazy to me, Protandim NAD Synergizer, but she's also that individual that can drink an espresso and go straight to bed. So it makes her feel a little bit tired. So I just told her, take your supplements at night, like leverage that tiredness into some better sleep, hopefully. So in a way, we should all be self-experimenting with all of the nutritional supplements that we're taking, and figuring out what's working best for us and what's not working best for us, and go with it. Listen to your body, be introspective.
Ooh, I like that. We have time for one more questions. One more question. It's from Jules, and she asked this. She says, for people that struggle with candida, I think is what it's called, does the yeast extract in the daily wellness negatively affect them?
So candida, right, has to do, and I forget off the top of my head if that's the genus or the species. I believe it's the genus, but it's referring to a specific type of yeast. The yeast in daily wellness, at least when it starts, right, is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So, right, you don't even have candida in the name. It's just brewer's yeast that we're leveraging. So they are two completely different species and completely unrelated, and candida being linked to that brewer's yeast or Saccharomyces cerevisiae.
Wow. So Jules, I hope you got that. That went straight over my head. I think we're in good hands for sure. Brian, man, this has been a dump load of knowledge, and I can't thank you enough.
Apologies.
To everyone, no, this is great. This is absolutely fantastic. Thank you for everyone who had their questions. These questions, guys, this phone call is for you. This isn't, just for myself to be like, hey, I was able to get Brian Dixon to speak to us. This is a very informative call for all of us to take advantage of. So the more out front we are with our questions. If you are getting asked certain questions you don't know the answer to, please write them down, because if you keep them in your journal and we come across next week whatever that product is, or you're able to go back into the library at under the Vision Summit YouTube channel, I promise you there's going to be a lot of explanation for you to be able to increase your knowledge and be armed with all of the data that you need to moving forward. So the more questions we have as a group, the better this call becomes and the more informative it becomes. So thank you for participating. Thank you for coming in. And Brian, one last question. What are we launching in June? Can you just elaborate on that for us, please?
Yeah, for sure. So what we're going to
He is so good.
So I hope that helps. So hope everyone got tickets. Look, I guess you got me on a call on a Wednesday. Little insider information. If they haven't sold out already, I've heard that we're anticipating those tickets are going to be selling out today, and the site will be taken down. So if you guys want to come, haven't got your tickets, maybe it's already too late. I don't know, but if you haven't, jump on there, grab your tickets, and I hope to see everyone in June for that amazing product launch.
That's awesome. So
yeah,
that is so good. So for those, I mean, obviously he got muted out, but the co-host and host, we have the ability to hear him. So let me elaborate on what he just said. I will give it to you straight. No, I'm teasing. It doesn't work that way. I wish I knew. All right. Well, it sounds good. So curiosity at the all-time high. I like that. June. Just keep that on your radar, guys. That is a specific product launch training type of an event. So it's very different than some of the other events that we've had. It's new, but I know that we're gonna have more details with that as soon as we get it. We'll make sure that posts out and gets out to everyone. So check the YouTube channel. Make sure you guys are using that. We'll have this recording up and ready for you guys to use to link out to whoever you need to. Brian, thank you for the information. That's okay. We did hear Beverly. She was not on mute. She did say, oh, shoot. She did not say the word. She said shoot. So everything's okay, Beverly. It is okay. All right, we'll let you guys go.
We have a little
enjoy the rest of your day.
Joke that grit is the word we use here when we need to say it without saying it. Right. Can I touch on 2 more points really quick? I'm sorry to keep dragging this out.
No,
but look, that June event is going to be incredible. Night 1 is a party, right? And then the reveal is going to happen there, and then the next day is product trainings. So it's going to be a really fun event. So get there if you can. And then the second thing, Rai, you were talking about as you're getting questions, or maybe you're thinking of questions yourself, to write those down, and absolutely do them. Bring them to these calls. I encourage you to do that. But if you need to get help with a product question, and maybe you need an answer quicker than a week, we have a dedicated email to answer product questions. Okay, so to Rai-Fri's ultimate point, you guys don't have to be the scientists. You have a scientific staff here that's here to help you out in any way that we can. If you have any questions on our products, do you want the email? Get ready to write this down. The email is product questions, one word, product questions @livevantage.com. We're here to help. Those come into the Department of Research and Development. Kiana Schmidt does, I think many of you have met her, does an amazing job. And over the years, she's built a database of thousands and thousands of questions and answers. So odds are we already have the answer for you, and we're just going to copy and paste it, and then you'll have a response for whatever question you might have. So don't be shy to contact us. We're here to be scientists, so you don't have to be.
So Brian, is that a pretty robust system? Like for example, if that blasts out and there's 1,000 questions or emails that come in tomorrow or this evening, how robust is that, and how long is the waiting period for people to anticipate?
Yeah, it does depend on demand. I mean, Kiana is just one person. We pitch in, myself and Christina, when the backlog gets too big. That's not very often. We try to get answers out just as absolutely quick as we can. You know, sometimes they'll come in a different language. We may have to get it translated back and forth, so that can slow it down. Sometimes it's not necessarily an R&D question, so we may have to reach out to someone else in the organization to help find an answer. So a few variables there, but we always try to get back just as absolutely quick as we can to everybody.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. So we try to manage expectations in the field, correct? So so when we can't say, hey guys, as soon as you send a product question over at LifeVantage, they'll get right back to you. That is setting yourself up to really not be in a good place. You're going to be constantly, trying to do it. Now, if it comes in 12 hours, great, but just manage the expectations of the field. We're working together. Obviously corporate is a partner of ours. So if there is an inundation, we know we can get to it, but are we safe to say within 7 to 10 days, Brian?
Oh, for sure. I think we send out a little autoresponder as well with kind of that expectation there. I forget if we say 5 or 7 days in there, but Keon is almost always flipping them around in 24 hours. But like I said, it could take longer, but within the week for sure. Yeah.
All right. That sounds great. Go ahead. I think go ahead, Beverly, you had your finger up. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Oh, now she can unmute.
Yeah. I've been asking everybody this question. Brian, are you going to do a video on the heart health stack? The new is it heart health?
Yeah, I recorded that before we left for EA. So it should be coming out, I would guess, just about any day. I'm not sure if it's gone through studios or like the studios team just yet or not. So I'm not sure the release date, but maybe Rye, maybe I can reach out to you if there's someone better. I'll see if I can track that down.
Yeah, you and I can collab, and as soon as we get it, we'll post it and make sure that it goes out to everyone. That would be fantastic.
Okay,
we'll get the link.
We'll do for sure. And Rye, I appreciate that, and I wish we could get back to people instantaneously on these questions. And I'll tell you guys just a little bit of insider information, but I'm so passionate about trying to get you guys answers as quickly as possible. A project I'm working on right now with Kiana is going through that entire database, cleaning it up, making sure it's appropriate in every way. And then once we've done that, we're going to look at some sort of system that we can create where you all will be able to just go in and search yourselves and then literally be able to have a scientist in a pocket and be able to deliver your answers literally instantaneously. So beautiful. Stay tuned to that.
Man, we love all the work you're doing, buddy. It's a breath of fresh air. It makes our life a lot easier. And this is like I said, this is a true partnership. We can't do what we do. You can't do what we do. And that's what makes this thing beautiful. So thanks for all you're doing. Guys, I'm going to talk to Brian Dixon. I know in Florida, we did discuss certain dates and times. We're going to play around with that the following week. So we will get this out to you. We'll give you plenty of time to plan for. But we're gonna kind of play around with a few other times other than noon on Wednesday. So just look for that as well. All right. So keep changing the world. We love you. We respect you. We praise you. We appreciate you. And know how powerful and grateful we are for every single person that's on here. Whether you're a brand new customer, you're looking to be a customer, a distributor, building your business, however you fit into this, I know that there's a tremendous benefit today. So Brian, thank you again. Look forward to next week, and I'll let you guys all go. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you both.